Hello. Oops. Sorry. Trying to wake up everybody. All right, everybody. Let's gather around and we'll get started. All right, so we are in Parashat Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 1. And I was trying to put my screen on my computer screen on the screens, but I was trying one trick and it didn't work, so we'll keep trying next time. How about we pray and get started? Father, we thank you for your presence with us this beautiful day. You are with us not only in this place, but us in the sense of everyone here on earth, in this world. You are with us, and you have a plan for us. And so we trust in you, Father, even though things are deteriorating from your original plan. We trust you. We know you have a plan. And in the middle of it all, we are thankful that you redeemed us. And we pray for those who need to hear for the first time or one more time the message of salvation, that they too may come and believe and submit themselves to you. Help us proclaim your word, study and grow in our faith, that we may serve you in a more efficient and effective way. We thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen. Amen. All right. Leviticus chapter 1. We are here again. We're doing this again. And I was telling Brent that I have something new. You know, he was telling me he was looking at his notes from last time, and so I told him we're doing something new, and it is actually something new to me. So yes, so I'm still studying and still learning Leviticus. All right, so chapter 1. I'm going to be reading from what is called the ESV. Sometimes I forget what it stands for, but we're reading from the ESV, whatever that means.
English Standard Version.
Standard? Okay, English Standard Version. No particular reason. I just got started with that, and then when I realized where I was too deep into it. I didn't want to restart what I was doing, so I kept going. So Leviticus chapter 1. Let me teach you one word, and we're going to use what that word means for our reading today. So the word is salient. Salient. S-A-L-E-I-N-T. S-A-L-E-I-N-T. Salient. Do you know what that means? You ever heard that word? Sometimes we talk about the salient point or the salient points. It's kind of a nerdy word. It means something that stands out. Something that stands out. And so it's something that's highlighted. So we're going to do that to read Leviticus, see how far we get. Because this is not story. So I have taught to you from many, many different portions, but it seems like I'm always interpreting and teaching the stories, right? And well, we are in a portion of Scripture that's not a story, and so that works a little different. So we don't have all the drama stuff, the climax, the confrontation, and all the stuff leading up to it and then afterwards. We don't have any of that. We do have structure, though. And that's precisely how we're going to use that word. We're going to find out what is standing out, what stands out in the structure, because the author is going to tell us what is he highlighting in the structure. And what we're going to see is that there is a consistent theme being highlighted through the structure of these instructions. And so it would have been much better if I could have shown it to you, of course, and that's what I was trying to do. But we're gonna have to use our imagination a little bit. Okay, so chapter 1, verse 1. The Lord called Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of livestock from the herd or from the flock." Okay. When we work in story portions, historical narrative, we are looking for one particular type of verb, which is what is called the main line of storytelling. So we are looking for the verbs that are in past tense, that are telling us this is what was done, and this so-and-so did this, so-and-so said this, so-and-so did this. Here is different. We're not telling a story. So here the main line is going to be, and he shall do this, and he shall do that, and he shall do this, and he shall do that. That is the main line. Anything that deviates from that is either introductory or is highlighted. And that's where we're going to get to the parts that are highlighted, the salient parts in the structure. So right off the bat, we begin with introductory material. So the Lord called to Moses, that's past tense. If you were telling a story, that's, you introduce it with a little bit of a story so that you can get to the instructions. This is an instruction genre. We talk about music genres, right? So we talk about rock and country and all that stuff and all of the subgenres in each one of them. Well, we have the same in literature, of course. So we have historical narrative, it's a primary genre, but then we have these things, like a grocery list of, here's a honey-do list, right? Here's what I want you to do. So you're going to do this, and then 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 you're going to do this. That's the main line. Whatever deviates from that is going to either be introductory or it's going to be highlighted. And that's going to tell us not necessarily what's important, because the main line is important, but it's going to tell us what's bold, highlighted, in italics, and we see a theme running then through it. So we begin with the introductory material, right? So the Lord called Moses, that's past tense, he called Moses and spoke to him, past tense, in the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak," that's a command, "speak to the people of Israel and say to them," another command, but this is all introductory still, Then we come to the first case. Then it says, when any of you brings an offering. So the instructions, when it says, and he shall do this, and he shall do that, and he shall do this, and he shall do that, they are introduced by different cases. So in the case of this offering, do this and this and this and that. Let's move on. In the case of this other offering, then do this and this and this and that. And so that's our structure. Introductory material telling us what the case is and the instructions. Introductory material, what's the case, instructions. That's how it works. So here we have the second half of verse 2. It begins with a big, all-encompassing case. When any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of livestock from the herd or from the flock. That's going to take us all the way through chapter 1, this particular case. Because in chapter 2, we're going to talk about grain offerings. So that's a different case, different type of offering, right? So this particular case is going to encompass offerings that are from the livestock, either from the herd, it's going to be one type, and from the flock, right? So cows or sheep or goats. Verse 3, we have a subcategory then. Verse 3 says, if his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, that's case number 1, he shall. Now we begin with the, he shall do this and he shall do that, right? So we begin with the instructions. So, he shall offer a male without blemish. He shall bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting. And look, we have the first line that is off of this structure. It says, that he may be accepted before the Lord. It didn't say that he shall be accepted, right? It's not in past tense, and he was accepted. No, it's not neither one of those. It is that he may be. It's a purpose sentence here. Purpose result. Those two are kind of when it comes to God, whatever he intends to do happens because he is sovereign. So whenever he says, this is what I want you to do so that this is the result, this is my intent for you, because the result is I'm going to accept you. You're going to be accepted. So that is a purpose / result sentence here. So that he may be accepted before the Lord. Now, this word accepted, in English, it gives us the idea of, boy, you barely made it. You know, you passed with a 70. I mean, you're just barely scraped. I barely accept you. You know, I would say probably just tolerate you, maybe, you know. That's the idea of the English word, but that's not at all what the Hebrew means. So in the Hebrew, let me look it up here what the word is. That he may be accepted, ratzon is the Hebrew word. This has to do with the things that are delightful to him. The things that bring him pleasure. So it's not that, well, you know, you did all the steps, so I guess you're accepted. No, it's like that's you did what brings me pleasure. So I'm pleased with you. I'm embracing you. I'm bringing you close. It's full acceptance. Yes. Let me look super quick. So that would be in Genesis 4. since I can do that here. It uses a different word there. It says that his offering was, that the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. And it's a different word, but I will have to study that word in order to comment on it. So, and I'm not prepared right now, but the concept is similar. So we could say it's probably a synonym of ratzon, or very closely related. It's functioning in the same way, right? So coming back to Leviticus 1:3, the purpose/result sentence here, that he may be accepted, that the person, not just the sacrifice, and that's the same that we saw in Genesis 4, that Abel and his offering, they were both regarded by the Lord. So here, the offering is accepted, the person is accepted, is pleasing to the Lord. Then we move to verse 4, continuing with the instruction. He shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him. And it shall be accepted for him. Now, it shall be accepted for him. It's not an instructive command. It's not, okay, bring this, lay your hand, be accepted. It's not something you do. It's something that God does. So because of that, it's actually not an instruction to Moses or to give to Aaron, to give to the priest, and to give to the offerer, to the person, anyone that brings the sacrifice. So in that regard, it stands out. It's not part of the mainline verb type in the text. So it's not an instruction, but it's again telling us this is the result. This is what's going to happen. And the sacrifice, shall be accepted for him. In Hebrew, we don't have a word for it. So it's the same word, he. So you need to, by context, decide, is it talking about the person or is it talking about the offering? And so it's interesting, this version in verse 4 says, and he shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him. So probably speaking of the offering itself. Yes?
Before we get away from verse 3, so my version doesn't have the result in verse 3. So it doesn't give the
That he may be accepted before the Lord?
Correct.
It doesn't say that? What does it say?
It says, if his offering be a burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own voluntary will at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord. And then it doesn't go.
What version is this?
This is the King James.
The Old King James?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue reading. Is that the end of verse 3?
That's the end of verse 3.
Really? Very interesting that they didn't translate the word ratzon.
Right.
That's the free will. They call that the free will. So it's just a matter. In this version, it's saying it's God's favor to accept it, and in the other version, it's saying it's the man's favor to give it.
I see. So they're taking it as, let me go back here to Leviticus 1. Read that again, Michael.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, it also says if
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct.
If his offering be a burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own voluntary will at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord. That's verse 3.
So the part where they're talking about of his own will.
It's-
Yeah, it's a weird translation.
Yeah. He shall bring it to be accepted. That's literally what it says. To be pleasing
Like you said, it's like
before the
it's
Lord.
from the reverse perspective, and they
Yeah.
translated it.
Well, I mean, it's syntactically, it is the verb here to be accepted, or it's not a verb, but it's a phrase functioning as the direct object of to bring. You bring it to be accepted. So syntactically, it is related to the verb to bring. Yakriv oto lirsono. So you bring it to be accepted. So, yeah. Maybe you should switch to a more modern Bible. Okay, so let's go back to it then. So to verse 4 then. He shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him. So that is a different construction. It's not an instruction for the person who is bringing the offering. And then it says to make atonement for him. To make atonement for him. So I'm basically giving you kind of 3 slots. So the first slot is the instruction. He shall bring it, he shall lay his hand, and so on. That's the main line of the instructions here. Then we have the next bucket, let's call it that, the next type of phrase here. Speaking of, I'm going to get to you in a moment, Mario. This is which one is this? This is the NASB. Okay, yeah, good.
TLV is similar.
TLV is very close to the NASB, yeah. So we have this second bucket in which we're putting this phrase, and it shall be accepted for him. It's not an instruction. It's highlighted, but it's not. There's a third type of verb that is the part that I really want to highlight for us, which is here where it says to make atonement for him. And in that bucket, I'm putting the phrase from verse 3, which is that he may be accepted before the Lord. So if I could show you the picture, which I tried, right, to put it on the screen and it didn't work. If I could show it to you, then you will see on one hand, you will see all of the instructions, and then indented, you will see the phrase, and it shall be accepted for him. And then even further indented will be in verse 3, that he may be accepted before the Lord and to make atonement for him. My point is this: those phrases are functioning in the same way. So the act of being pleasing to the Lord, not just acceptable, but pleasing to the Lord, is related to the atonement. That it will make atonement for you. And here's the reason. The principle that we find in Leviticus 17:11, this is like, if you don't memorize any verse from Leviticus, if you only memorize one, this is the one. Leviticus 17:11. Let Let me pull it up here and read it so that I'm not just working from memory. Leviticus 17:11, it says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement by the life." So here it should say by reason of the life. It is the blood makes atonement by reason of the life, because there is life in the blood. Right? So the blood of animals is limited because the life of the animal is limited. That's why the blood of the Son of God is the maximum, because obviously he is God. They both make atonement. So if a person says, well, the sacrificial system, they just covered the sin, but they really didn't do anything. No. Atonement means to cover, it means to smear, to cover over. But what are you covering with? You know, people think of what is it covering? What is atonement covering? Well, it's covering sin, duh. Yeah, but what with? What is that thing that you're smearing over? I don't know. Blood? Maybe. But why? Because it's the life. Blood doesn't make atonement. Blood is the vehicle of the thing that makes atonement. Meaning life. So when you take a pill, the case doesn't do anything for you. The casing is the content that's inside of the casing that has the active ingredient, right? So blood is a vehicle for life. Life is what makes atonement. So that's what returning back to Leviticus 1. What I'm saying is that there is a correlation between making atonement, infusing with life, and being accepted before the Lord. Bringing the sacrifice that is pleasing to Him, that causes Him to be pleased with you, is life. 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 The reason for that is that He is life. So for you to be accepted, embraced, to be delightful to Him, the more life that you have, the better. The more death you have, the farther away He's going to have to push you from Him. So He provided the life. He provided the sacrificial system to make it possible that Israel could come to His presence. But because that is limited, He provided His own Son to infuse us with eternal life, that we may be in His presence forever, and even the sins that we commit after redemption, they affect us, but they don't cover us with eternal death any longer, because the eternal part of that is already taken care of. That's the value of understanding Leviticus. We get a deeper understanding of our salvation. Okay. So the passage continues, right? Verse 5. Then he shall kill, so now we go back to the main line of the instruction. Then he shall kill the bull before the Lord, and Aaron's son the priest shall bring the blood, and throw the blood against the sides of the altar, that is, at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then he shall flay the burnt offering, and cut it into pieces, and the sons of Aaron the priest shall put fire on the altar, and arrange wood on the fire, and Aaron's sons the priest shall arrange the pieces, the head, the fat, on the wood that is on the fire that is on the altar. but its entrails and its legs he shall wash with water, and the priest shall burn all of it on the altar. So you see, I like the consistency of this version because it's telling me that everyone is translating every one of the instructions the same way. It helps me. If I'm not able to work with the Hebrew, it helps me. Because every time I see, he shall do this, he shall do this, he shall do this, he shall do this. All of these are the instructions. So in the middle of verse 9, we have a break in the instructions. Right? So verse 9 says, but his entrails and his legs he shall wash with water, and the priest shall burn all of it on the altar. And then it says, it is a burnt offering. That's not a command. That's not an instruction. It's identifying the type of offering. It is a burnt offering. And then, look, it says, a gift of a pleasing aroma to the Lord. So again, we have first bucket, the instructions. Second bucket, I'm going to put this, it is a burnt offering. So I'm identifying the type of offering. And then in the third bucket, I'm going to put, it is a gift of a pleasing aroma to the Lord. What did I just do? I just added one more component to this third bucket. What else did we have in that third bucket? We had that he may be accepted, that he may be pleasing before the Lord, to make atonement for him. And now we have, it is a gift of a pleasing aroma to the Lord. These things are parallel. This is what's standing out from the context, from the structure. This is what's salient in the structure here. This is what's being highlighted. That these things go together. Be pleasing to the Lord, make atonement because you're covered with life, and now it is a gift of a pleasing aroma to the Lord. A pleasing aroma to the Lord. Let me say a couple of things here. In some of your versions, like in this one, it says an offering by fire. An offering by fire. The Hebrew word is esh, which is the word fire. However, scholars, and we don't obviously have the time to get into a lot of these details, but when you take these languages from the ancient Near East, you find similar words in some of the other languages. So you can say in Canaanite, they have a lot of common words with Hebrew, but also Moabite do, and Arabic does as well. And so these are called cognate languages. The same thing happens with German, between German and English. Right? You're going to have many similar words. And then via Latin, you're going to have a lot of common words between English and French, English and Spanish, English and Portuguese, English and Italian. But it's better if we think of English and German because they share the same root, right? It's not borrowed words from Latin. It's English and German, they share the same root. That's what happens with Hebrew and Canaanite, Hebrew and Moabite, Hebrew and Arabic, and Northwest Semitic and Ugaritic, and some of these ancient languages that you can actually learn those things. So there is another word it's also spelled esh, like fire, but it means gift. And so what scholars are saying is that this may not necessarily be an offering by fire because there's at least one particular case in which it speaks of esh, but it's not a fire offering. Here we are in the context of a fire offering. And I forgot to, I should have bring it with me what verse that is. I read it, but I didn't think of bringing it because we have so much anyway. Maybe we can do it next time. In which it shows that it uses the same word as here, but it's not an offering that you put in the fire. I can't remember what type of offering it is. But so you can't say that it's an offering by fire. And so what they say is that this is a cognate word. It is a word that has a different root, even though spelled similarly. That means gift. So that's why the translation I'm reading to you, it says a gift of a pleasing aroma. A gift of a pleasing aroma to the Lord. So the point, though, is that this is in the same bucket with atonement. Now, here's what's important, too, is that he's only going to mention atonement in this chapter only once. Why? Because when he talks about the other types of sacrifices, you are supposed to make the connection. The structure is going to be the same. The salient point is going to be similar, but it's a type of case law. So if this and this and this are present, then the result is this. I don't need to mention it, basically. You need to understand it. So the point is that these references to either be accepted or a pleasing aroma, they point to the issue of atonement. That the reason why they're pleasing to the Lord and the reason why they are pleasing to Him is because they have this connection with life. They have this connection with atonement. So that was the first subcase, beginning in verse 3. It took us to verse 9. Now in verse 10, we begin another subcase. So in verse 3, it says, if his offering is a burnt offering from the herd. Now in verse 10, look, it says, if his gift for a burnt offering is from the flock. So first case, the herd. Second case, the flock. And he says, from the sheep or the goats, right? Then it begins with the main line of instructions. Instruction. So it says, he shall bring a male without blemish, and he shall kill it on the north side of the altar before the Lord. And Aaron's sons, the priest, shall throw its blood against the side of the altar. And he shall cut it into pieces with its head and its fat. And the priest shall arrange them on the wood that is on the fire that is on the altar. But the entrails, the legs, he shall wash it with water. And the priest shall offer all of it, and burn it on the altar. And then we come to the second bucket. It is a burnt offering. That's not an instruction. That's a change in the structure that's identifying the type of offering it is. It is a burnt offering. And then we have the third bucket. It is a gift of a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Again, a reference ultimately to atonement. The reason why it's pleasing to the Lord is because of the life of the sacrifice. So you're coming to the Lord, you're bringing Him a gift. It is done according to the instructions, and it's a sacrifice that makes atonement. It brings life, and so it is pleasing to the Lord. When it burns, it is pleasing to the Lord. And so that is the reference to atonement. And so we see that this is the salient part of the structure, meaning it's what the author, because he didn't have a highlighter, he couldn't click on bold, italics, shaded. He couldn't do any of that. The way that they had to highlight any content was making it different in the structure so it stands out. And that's what the author is trying to make stand out for us here. That the Lord accepts, the one who offers it accepts the offering, and this is pleasing to him. And it is all based on the one mention of the atonement up in verse 4. All right? Okay. So, did you have a question, Michael?
I was going to add something, but I can't. I lost my.
Lost the place?
Okay. So you're talking about the esh.
Yep.
So eshe or ishe, which is the aleph, the shin, and the hey. It's saying here in this lexicon that it is an offering made by fire.
Yeah, that's the old understanding of it.
Okay.
But a more recent understanding of it is that it is a cognate word that means gift.
Okay. And I just happened to notice that different vowel points with the same letters is also defined as to heal. So I thought that gives an interesting overview to that word, to the act of the sacrifice
I will have to
and the healing that comes from that.
I will have to look into it. It may be related to heating, in terms of healing through a change of temperature that's going to bring healing to the body, or something to that effect. It's like putting on a heating pad. Brent. Yeah. Cattle and sheep. Yeah, cattle and sheep. All right. Welcome to our friends. I thought only one of you was coming, but I'm glad to see a group of you guys. Welcome. Today we have a special day, and we are almost to the end of our Bible study, but we are in the book of Leviticus in the Torah. And in chapter 1, verse 14, it's on the screen in English. So in verse 14, then, we have the last case in chapter 1, and it's a completely different case. It says, if his offering to the Lord is a burnt offering of birds. Why would you bring a burnt offering of birds? Okay, so if you keep reading later on in Leviticus, if you come to chapter 12, for instance, it's going to tell you that it's due to consideration that you may not be able to afford either an animal from the cattle or from the sheep. So at least you can bring your burnt offering of birds, right? We see the mother of Yeshua, Miriam, bringing this type of offering. So which tells you the financial status of Yeshua himself. Interesting. Okay, so if his offering to the Lord, verse 14, is a burnt offering of birds, then he shall bring his offering of turtle doves or pigeons. That's the two options you have, right? And we notice that we enter into the instructions. He shall bring his offering of turtle doves or pigeons, and the priest shall bring it to the altar and wring off its head and burn it on the altar. Its blood shall be drained out on the side of the altar. He shall remove its crop with its content and cast it beside the altar on the east side in the place for ashes. He shall tear it open by its wings, but shall not sever it completely. And the priest shall burn it on the altar on the wood that is on the fire. It is a burnt offering. Now we have the statement of identity. What type of offering are we talking about here? And then the third bucket. It is a gift of a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Again, a reference to verse 4, to the atonement that is in verse 4. And atonement is accomplished by the life that is in the blood. This is the reason why the Lord gave the whole sacrificial system, why God gave us the whole sacrificial system, so that we may draw near to him through a blood sacrifice. Through a blood sacrifice. So the blood of animals has a limited capacity in terms of in terms of the degree that it can infuse us with life. Of course, the life of the animal is even inferior than the human life. So it has a limited capacity to infuse us with life. However, the life of the Son of God, the life of Yeshua of Nazareth, is limitless. That is why he is the only atonement through which we can be accepted, we can be pleasing to the Father. And he is our sacrifice. All right, so let's see if we can do a little bit of Leviticus 2. Not too much, because we're running out of time. So, same principle. We're going to have the instruction, and we look for whatever in the instruction deviates from it, and that's going to tell us what's highlighted. So we begin. We begin with telling us the case, right? So verse 1, chapter 2, verse 1. When anyone brings a grain offering of an offering to the Lord, his offering shall be of fine flour. So we begin, we give the statement of the case, when anyone, and then we begin with the instructions. His offering shall be of fine flour. He shall pour oil on it, and put frankincense on it, and bring it to Aaron's sons, the priests. Notice that, for instance, here I begin with one verb that says shall, right? His offering shall be. But then the next two, why am I putting it together? You know, when it says, and put frankincense on it and bring it to Aaron's sons, the priests. It doesn't say shall. Well, the reason is that you have one controlling verb for all three sentences, for all three clauses. So the first verb, he shall pour it on it, he shall pour oil on it, and shall pour frankincense on it. Or put frankincense on it. So you could translate it here, he shall put frankincense on it. Sometimes they take the liberty in English so that it wouldn't sound so mechanical. The problem is that we miss the meaning in Hebrew. So he shall put frankincense on it, and he shall bring it to Aaron's sons, the priests, in verse 2. And he shall take from it a handful of the fine flour and oil with all its frankincense, and the priest shall burn this as its memorial portion on the altar. And then we go straight to the third bucket, a gift of a pleasing aroma to the Lord. We know this from chapter 1. A gift of a pleasing aroma to the Lord. This is the purpose for which the Lord is giving this instruction, that you may draw near to him through the blood of the atonement, and he will be pleased. He will accept you. He will accept your offering and yourself, your person. And then verse 3, but the rest of the grain offering shall be for Aaron and his sons. It is most holy. That's another statement of identities. That's the second bucket, right? In the first chapter, it would say, it is a burnt offering. Here, it is most holy. That's the second bucket. And then the third bucket, it says, of the Lord's gift offerings. It is most holy of the Lord's gift offerings. That is a reference all the way back to atonement. It relates to atonement. But notice something here. It says, it is most holy. What type of offering is chapter 2 talking about? It's the grain offering, mincha in Hebrew. It's a grain offering. It's also a poor person's offering. It's not a blood offering, but it's almost like an excuse to just come to the temple to pray. King David uses this, and because he lived in the temple all the time, in the tabernacle before the temple was built. He wanted to be in God's presence. But you don't come to the king without bringing a present. You bring a present to the king. And so he would bring, because he would go there all the time, not that he couldn't afford it, but he just wanted to just be in his presence every day. So he will bring a grain offering to the Lord. But notice it says it is most holy. Kodesh Kadashim, the Holy of Holies. Wow. So you would think, the animal offering is greater in holiness than this, simple grain offering. It's not. It has a higher level of holiness than even the burnt offering in chapter 1. Pretty amazing. Now remember, holiness is related to life. Holiness means to overflow with life. To overflow with life. That's what holiness means. That's why in order to approach him, you have to be infused with life. Religiosity will tell you the opposite without knowing. Religiosity will command you to fill yourself with death in order to approach the holy God. You see, all of the practices of religiosity, they are related to death. They are death rituals, or you relate to your wife in a manner that is speaking death. You relate to your brothers and sisters in a manner that speaks death. You are judgmental. You condemn people. All of these things, that's what religions tell you will bring you closer to the living God, to the God who is holy. But nothing can be further from the truth, because it is life. He is life. He is overflowing with life. You need to attire yourself with life. You need to practice life in order to be accepted by the God who is life. And so therefore, true righteousness and true love are the appropriate works so that he will be pleased and receive you with life. Last comment. Speak up.
What I was going to ask you is that even though it's duty, he does look at the heart, verse 2. Because they don't do it out of spite or what have you. The willingness to come in because his heart wants to be purified and holy, to be able to associate with him forever.
Yeah, I mean, David speaks of who can dwell in your holy temple, right? And he says, he who is pure of heart, of hands, so that's the external part, and of heart, that's the internal part. So they both need to match. Because the hand speaks of the things that you do, and the heart speaks of the source of the things that you do. So they are going to match all the time. You may fool some people some of the time, but it will, of the abundance of the heart, that's what you're going to do. And whether it's life, then your actions are going to be life-giving to people. Your words will be life-giving. But if it is death, then the things that you do, they may look religious, but they're actually death. So, all right, we are totally out of time. So we're going to take a moment and take a moment to pray. But I hope that this is an encouragement for you to go home and read. Here's what I would recommend. Find the text on the internet, find it, whatever version you like, find it on the internet, copy and paste it onto Word, and begin to do these things. Begin to look for the verbs. Begin to look for the cases. When a person does this, line up all the verbs in one side. Indent the parts that come off the main structure, and you will see the things that are highlighted, the things that are salient, the things that are that stand out. And that will give you a much better understanding of the text if you're limited in Hebrew. But if you want to do the real thing, we have Phyllis over here. She'll take your information and tell you when to show up for you to start learning your Hebrew. So, all righty. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask you to please come to